For a couple of weeks, we've been studying it. We're going to know it inside and out when we're done with it, right? So many of us started with I knew it was about a guy and a fish. That's true. But there's a whole lot more to it. We've seen the condition of Jonah's heart was not good, not great. We say it every week. God told him to rise and go. And what did Jonah say? Rise and no. He did not want to do it. He had no intention of doing it, and it was the condition of his heart. Yes, he was a Jew. Yes, he knew the law of God. Yes, he was God's chosen people. But when it came to sharing the grace of God with others, other nations, other people, no go. Sorry, Lord, I'm not doing it. So he ran. He did everything he could to get away. And the Lord sends a storm. We talked about that it's not a storm to crush, to hurt, to harm. It's a storm to reclaim. It's a storm to shake things up so much that Jonah is forced to see that if you are with the Lord, or if you are for him and you are his people, you're his man, you're his woman, you're here for the ones that don't belong to the Lord. We're here to serve and to love those who don't know the grace that we've been given. If we experience it and know it, if we know the mercy and the grace of God, we're called to share it. And Jonah is forced to see this. It's obvious that this book is really all about the condition of our hearts, not just his. When God is speaking to Jonah, he's speaking to us. And we see that there's all kinds of ways that we can run from God because we don't have a heart for the things that he has a heart for. It's just that simple. We might say that, I love you, Lord, and I worship you. But the second it's something that we're not too fond of going to or doing, we have our ways. And maybe we are outwardly with him. Maybe we're connected enough and around enough people in church, and there's a little bit of peer pressure, so to speak, that outwardly we may be with him and we do the things we're supposed to. But God has made it clear that man looks on the outward appearance, but he looks on what? The heart. So if it's done begrudgingly, if, outwardly we're with him, but inwardly we're resisting, if we have a heart condition, he wants to work on that. If you're out running marathons, but your heart's this close to giving out, a doctor's not real concerned with, training for the next 5K or whatever. He wants to work on the heart. And that's what God is doing with Jonah. That's what he's doing with us. Last week we looked at Jonah awakening to God's grace, what it really means. Did we remember that? Being let into a place that you don't deserve to be let into by someone who has no obligation to let you in. We looked at grace as the topic of Jonah's prayer. He is praying, and that's the main topic of it, was to get to the point where he said people who, look to other idols, other things, to be who only you can be in our life, to rest on, to rely on anything else other than God, is to actually turn away from and miss out on all that is beautiful of God's grace. That's what we saw. It was the topic of his prayer. But today we're gonna stay here in chapter 2, and we're gonna look at the event, the occurrence of the prayer itself and what it teaches us. Not so much he was praying about grace, he's starting to realize it. That's great. We studied that. But now I just want to look at the nuts and bolts of what's happening there. How can Jonah go from just complete rebellion and then despair with the situation he's in to, by the end of the prayer, a man that is filled with faith? A man that says, I will give thanksgiving, I will offer sacrifices, I will keep my vows, I'm yours, I'm committed to you. How does he go from running to praying a prayer like that? Because this is a guy who is literally at the bottom. We use that metaphorically, but in this instance, we're talking about literally. He says it over and over and over. As you read through the first half of this chapter, I called out from the deep. You hurled me into the deep. The deep surrounded me. I think he was very aware of his circumstances, and they weren't great. This is a guy who is literally at rock bottom. And some of us today might be feeling like that. Some of us might be coming in today, and we're putting on the outward appearance, but inside we know that feeling. You know that weight of being in the deep, of being buried under whatever it is. Whatever it is that's cutting you off from where you desire to be, where you need to be, where you want to be, connected with the Lord and at peace and at rest. But you feel that pressure, you feel that burden with no way to even start getting there, sinking. The feeling of just literally being overwhelmed and lost in the deep. Jonah represents that condition, that feeling. And yet we start to see him rise. He says, I was in the deep. You threw me in the deep. I was at the base of the mountains, at the lowest places. Yes, he's there. But we start to see him rise, for things to begin to change. He starts with the verses about being trapped in the deep, but then we start to see things like, but you, Lord, my God, brought me up from the pit. Verse 7, he says, my prayer rose to you. So how does that occur? Do you see what I'm saying? Like what is it about the way and how Jonah prayed that things began to change? How can that happen? How can it change? What is the thing that enabled Jonah to escape the grip of what was pulling him down? And that thing is faith. It's the thing that when we do feel like we're burdened, when we're buried, when we're sinking, when we're in the deep, it's going to take faith. Faith, it rises up almost like a life preserver. You pull the cord, it inflates, and you start to rise out of the deep, out of the situation. Faith rose like a life preserver for Jonah, and it took his heart with it. And here's the thing. As soon as I say this, as soon as I go, hey, it's going to take faith. There's so many of us that will say, I wish I could do that. I wish I had faith. I hear what you're saying. And I wish I could trust God. I wish I believed in him like you do. You know, you're a preacher, you go to church, or maybe you have a neighbor who attends, and I'm not like you. I wish I had faith like you. Now, here's the thing. Do you think of faith like a talent? Like when Lauren comes up here and sings, and how many of you said, I wish I could sing like that? Or when any of the guys play an instrument, and you go, man, I've always wanted to play, but I was just joking around with Russ the other day because he got a Gibson guitar. And he's at our home church, and he's saying, man, I've tried and tried and tried, and, I wish I could play. It's just all the time and the practice, right? And we look at it kind of like, talent. Do you think of faith like that? Do you look at other people and say, man, I wish I had faith like he does? I used to watch the Panthers play, and, there's the part of you that goes and you watch Steve Smith, as little as he was so awesome, and man, I wish I could do that. But then you go, but I can't. And some of us just shrug and we throw our hands up and we say, it's a fun dream, it's a fun idea, but I can't. And I think a lot of us look at faith that way. And let me just say it. I love you guys, and if you're sitting here today thinking of faith as something that some people have and some people don't, and some people are really good at it, and some of us just will never be, you're wrong. That's not what faith is. It's not how it works. Faith is being controlled, remembering, and being controlled by the promises of God, what he has told you, and that affecting how you respond to the circumstances and the situations you're in. It's someone telling you that you trust, hey, I'll see you at 8 o'clock, and you have faith in it because they are going to show up. You know them, you trust them. You don't just, flip a switch. It's taking the facts, remembering what's been said, believing it, and trusting in it. And if we sit here today going, oh, God, man, Bill's just so filled with faith. I wish I could be that. I can't. That's not how it works. It's not a talent. And we see that this happens in Jonah's prayer. We can learn from his prayer how to respond. How do we deal with it when we're sinking, when we feel buried, when we're in the deep? How do we have faith that pulls us up from that and straight up onto dry land? How does that work? If we look closely here at this prayer, you're going to see that there's actually a couple of stages to the prayer. There's actually steps, if you will, to how he prays. First, we'll see that Jonah calls out. He cries out to God. Then he remembers, he thinks, he ponders things, and then lastly, he uses the word sacrifices, he vows, he commits to the Lord. So first he calls. Let's get into it. Jonah chapter 2, verse 2. In my distress I called to the Lord. From the deep, in the realm of the dead, I called for help. So what's the first step in faith? We're talking about it's not a talent. It's something that we can actually work on to do. We're looking at the prayer. What's the first step if we want to work on faith? Come on now. You can talk. Well, we're praying, but what does the prayer? Call out. Yell. I mean, pretty simple. I'm in trouble. What do? Help. He calls out. In my distress, I called to the Lord. From the deep, in the realm of the dead, I call. The first step, you yell for help. But you don't just yell into the ether and just hope that something in the universe will help. You call out to the Lord. You make a choice to reach out to Him, to look for Him. It says the same thing all through the Bible. Seek Him while He may be found. Call out to Him while He is near. Jeremiah 29, you will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. You don't just, well, whoever's out there, Lord, hear my cry. All through the scripture, Jonah's just one of a million people who did this very thing. They called out to the Lord. And notice that Jonah says, in my distress, I called to the Lord. You can see a parallel here to another famous man in the Bible with a J, Job. Chapter after chapter, Job is faced with all kinds of junk. He is in the deep. He is being crushed. And chapter after chapter, you can't blame him. He's frustrated. He complains. He curses the day that he was born. Some people said you should just curse God and die and get out of this mess. He's complaining. He questions God's power and plan, and why am I dealing with this? If only somebody would show that I've done everything right. Why am I here? And he's frustrated, and he complains, and he grumbles, and how can you blame the guy? He's literally lost everything. But then at the end of the book, after all those chapters of whining and crying, and my heart goes out to a person who's lost all his family and all of his fortune and everything. But nonetheless, he's complaining, he's griping, he's grumbling. And at the end of the book, God Himself commends Job for his faith. Now, if you and me are looking at it and we're like, that doesn't look like faith, except for one thing. In the middle of all that crying and grumbling and complaining, who was he doing it to? No matter how bad it got, no matter how wrong he was and the way he was thinking and what he was saying, it was still turned towards God. And then God commends him for his faith. Because God is a compassionate and understanding God who sees what we deal with, and He's, I get it, Job, it's frustrating, but even in the midst of all the fighting and crying and grumbling, he ranted and he raved, he questioned God, and all of that, but all of it he did to God. He yelled and complained, but to God. He did it while praying to God, no matter how bad it got. And both Job and Jonah are pictures of this. They never stopped calling out to God. But a lot of us, we can go a very long time in the deep without realizing that you haven't actually been talking to Him. You don't faith Him and speak to Him and call out to Him like Jonah and like Job. At best, you've maybe been worrying in His general direction, but that's not the same thing. It's not calling out to Him. So step one is to yell. Very simple. I think all of us can, everybody here still have a voice? Does everybody have the means to call out? Faith is not a talent. It is not something that people are just good at and others aren't. It starts with calling out. He calls out to God. But then secondly, he starts to think. When he first starts praying, he says, I called out to you. But when we get to the middle, it starts to change. Jonah starts to say, I look. At first it's just, I don't even know where to look. I'm calling. Lord, help me. But then it begins to change. I look. Later on, he says, I remember you. He's not just saying, I'm just looking in some general direction. No, he's saying, I'm talking about, thinking about, pondering, remembering in the right direction towards God. But I'm not just calling out, help me. Now I'm starting to think on things and remember. And what he thinks about We actually touched on this last week really quickly. And so today I'm going to spend a chunk of time here. I want us to understand what's going on here. He looks to the temple, right? If Cheyenne was up here and did a great job and read, you're kind of like, what is a guy and a fish talking about a temple for? How is that faith? What is going on? Well, he starts to talk about and says, I remember the temple. And to put it into New Covenant, New Testament terminology, even though he didn't have the word and didn't have all the full picture that we do, what he's talking about, what he's starting to think about is the gospel. The good news that God forgives and redeems and saves. Because in Jonah's time, the temple was a picture of what all through the Bible, Old and New Testament, the gospel is doing for us. It was a picture of it, how God saves. And every time you look to the gospel, every time, it's going to build your faith. He thinks of the temple, and I don't have all the time to, put up pictures and graphics, but the thing is, the temple was specifically designed with courtyards and inner courtyards, and you just went in deeper and deeper until in the very heart of the temple you had, does anybody know what it's called? The Holy of Holies. Now, we've studied what it is to be holy. Holy is to be set apart. The easiest way I tell people all the time, what do you want to understand holy? Think about your toothbrush. That is set aside for one thing and one thing only, right? Would you just hand it off to anybody to use? Would you? Yeah, sure. Would you use it for anything but that? Would you want somebody to clean something with it? No. It's set apart. It is saved for. It is pure and clean for you and you alone. And the Holy of Holies, just by its name, doubles down on this place is unlike any other place. And in the middle of the Holy of Holies, you had the Ark of the Covenant. Just a simple wooden box covered with some gold. And in it were some things that God had told the people of Israel to keep. And among it was the 10 Commandments, the law. When you hear the law of God or the 10 Commandments, you're talking about the same thing. And the 10 Commandments, the law of God, is basically, it's a picture of the character of God. Who he is, what he's like. When he tells us, don't lie, it isn't about being a killjoy, not letting you have fun. He's letting you know, I don't ever speak anything but the truth. The law of God is the picture of who God is, his character, and how we should model and build our life by that picture. That's what it is. That's what is in the heart of the Holy of Holies, in the ark, right there. And God told the people, that's where I will dwell. Literally, there was a period in time where the glory of God, the Shekinah glory of God, using old terms that try to give us a picture of what it was like for God to be in that place. He said, this is where I'll be. And if you want to talk with me, if you want to interact with me, if you want to be with me, we're going to have to do it over the law. That's where we're going to meet. That's how it has to be. Because the fact is, you have to meet me there, or else there's no relationship, there's no connection. Now, a lot of people, when you say that God puts this, this is how it has to be. This is the way it's going to be. If you want to interact with me, you're going to have to meet me over the law. You're going to have to line your life up with how I am. You're going to have to do it that way. That's where a lot of people, it's a hard pill to swallow. It's where we don't like it. He's so exclusive. He's kind of a jerk, Why can't I be who I am and do what I want to do? Let me just use an analogy here. If you've got a conductor, right? You guys are my symphony. I'm the conductor. And I've always, I play music, but I've always felt like, is there really something happening, or are they just waving their hands around? I think they know what they're doing, because I've seen conductors that are so good that even though a room full of people are playing, they'll say, hold it. And they'll point somebody out and say, I think we're a little out of tune. And I'm like, man, what an ear. Imagine we're all in here and I have sent you out the score, the music, the piece that we're going to play. And everybody, no matter what you're playing, oboes, violins, cellos, trumpets, French horns, it doesn't matter. You've got your part that it all works together, right? And if we're all in here playing and it sounds okay, but then something keeps happening over here and we go, something's not right, something needs to change. And I go, Landon, what exactly are you playing? And I say, everybody quiet for a minute. And we're all playing like, Bach's Fifth Symphony or whatever, but he's playing Old MacDonald. I say, we have to meet over the score, right? We can't interact. If you're not going to surrender to, submit to, follow what we're all in agreement is what we're trying to play, there's not going to be any beauty. There's only going to be ugliness, because it only takes one guy deciding to play something totally different that it won't work. And it isn't me being unrealistic and a jerk or whatever. We're just saying, for there to be beauty, for there to be perfection, for things to be right, this is where we meet. This is what we have to agree on. This is the way it's going to take. And he can get upset and he can complain and how rigid, how rude of you, why can't I express myself? But I will have to just say, I'm sorry. But unless you obey the music, there won't be any fellowship here. There won't be any connection. This is just how it is. Because this is the peace. This is the way music works. This is the way. And to a degree, he would have to repent of wanting to be the conductor, of saying, no, I'm going to play it this way. Am I wrong for telling him, if you aren't going to meet me over the score and agree on this, there's nothing we can say and do. If you're going to continue to play it this way, and this is the direction we're trying to get, it won't work. The Bible tells us the same thing, that if we want to have fellowship with God, we have to be playing the same score, the same piece. We have to be fulfilling the law and repenting of wanting to be the conductor, wanting to be God and do it our way and do it the way we think it should sound. We want to be the conductor of our lives, but without obedience, there's no beauty, only sin and death. And so each of us has to deal with the law of God. This is where we'll meet him. This is the peace that if there's going to be connection and beauty, that's just the way it is. But there's a problem, because unlike a musician who could say, all right, I don't know what I was thinking. Old MacDonald, man, what was I doing? You're right. I'll take the right piece, and I'll practice, and I'll get better at it, and I will meet you here over the score, over the piece, and we'll do it the right way. A musician can do that. They can practice, they can train, they can get better, and they might not ever do it perfect, but he can at least agree to play the right piece. There's a problem, though, when we talk about meeting God over his score, over his music, over the law, is that none of us can practice enough, none of us can rehearse enough to ever get it, to ever play the part right. It's impossible to ever completely meet that standard of God's character that the law is revealing. When the law shows us that he's not a liar and he's not a thief, and that he doesn't have a hateful heart that, as Jesus said, even if you don't literally physically kill somebody, it's the hate in your heart that is guilty of murder. He doesn't covet and steal and cheat and lie. He's not that way. He's totally holy. He's different. And we can never measure up to that. Now, what do we do now? Because we say, well, what kind of God does this? What kind of God says this is where we'll meet? Yeah, I hear you. We got to play the same piece. But what kind of person puts out a piece that no one can ever play, no one can ever perform? Over the tablets of the law inside this box in the Holy of Holies, there was a slab, a lid. In Hebrew, the word was kaporet. In Greek, hilastrion. It meant the place of propitiation. Other translators, and over time, one of the modern English terms for it is the mercy seat. Propitiation, fun word, but we shouldn't be scared of big church words because they mean things. Propitiation means to turn away wrath through a payment. It means that something has to be done about an offense, about a wrong, about a problem. Justice must be served. Something has to be done. And it isn't just a slap on a wrist and well, it's all okay. There has to be a payment. And wrath isn't God just being cranky. That's our kind of wrath. That's the way we are. We get cranky. We get mean. But God's wrath is his settled opposition to us not meeting him over the law. It's the conductor saying, I cannot bend on this. I will not bend on it. This is just how it has to be. For there to be beauty, for there to be unity, for there to be relationship, fellowship, all of that we're seeking, this is the peace. This is how it has to be. And to resist that, to say, if you will not, if you cannot, if you won't, I can't meet you there. And it's not that God is cranky, it's that he cannot, by just his very nature. It's like asking a fire to not be hot so that ice can hang out with it. We just cannot be in his presence. We can't be with him. It just is what it is. So what do? We're in this weird situation where this is where we're going to meet him. This is how it has to be. He can't change who he is, but he can't be around anything less. It's just a nightmare of a situation. But over the law that we have to meet him at, the character of God where we have to meet him, there was this slab, this lid, this mercy seat. And in the temple, the picture of where God meets us, on this slab, the place of propitiation, the place where payment is made, this is where every year one person that God deemed the high priest of the people would go through all this stuff to be worthy to go back behind the curtain one time, and they would sprinkle the blood of the sacrifices on the mercy seat. The law is right there. This is where we have to meet. And I can't meet you. I can't meet you here. I can't get close to you. But the blood, a payment, nothing less than death, sacrifice would be offered. And it was a picture of God saying, I will take this payment and not hold your sin against you. I will allow this to be the propitiation, the payment. And this is the world that Jonah was in. He was still in the Old Testament where this was going on, where there was a temple, where sacrifices were being offered. And when he's praying the prayer saying, I look to the temple, I lifted my prayer to your temple, he's thinking of the place where payment is made. This is what he's thinking about. This is what he's pondering. He's remembering. And when he did that, even though he didn't know, you get what I'm saying? This is in a time before Christ has come and the name would be known, but the plan and the gospel was still fully there, and he didn't even realize it. But this is what he's looking at. He's looking at the gospel. He's looking at a picture of Jesus. This is what Jonah was doing. Because the gospel is the Father empties the account of heaven. He bankrupts the account of heaven, the most precious thing that heaven has, the Son of God himself. Romans 3:25 says that God gave his Son as a propitiation. The very same word. You had the Old Testament, the law. This is where we have to meet. We can't without this protection of sacrifice, of payment, of propitiation, of blood. Without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness of sins, is what Hebrews tells us. Heaven is literally heaven because Christ is there, and it gives him up. The Father gives him up so that he can become the payment, the propitiation. When you read Romans 3:25 and you get to it and it says he was given as a propitiation, it's literally referring to that mercy seat. We start to see that space, that lid, that place where blood was shed to protect us from being in the holiness of God's presence that would just overwhelm us. Jesus is that mercy seat, that physical thing that was in the Holy of Holies was just a picture. of Jesus himself. He is the mercy seat. He is the sacrifice. He is the good news. And when we look to the temple, the same way that Jonah does, we're not looking to a place with mortar and brick and stone and rock. We look to Jesus because he is the temple. He's the one that says, you tear down this temple and I'll rebuild it in 3 days. And they all freaked out. Oh, this took years to build. He wasn't talking about the building. That's just a picture of who he is and what he has come to do. Jesus is the one that covers the law. He's the mercy seat where blood is spilled, and anybody who comes to the Father through Jesus can now meet the Father and play the score and do it right, not by your ability. It'd be like sitting behind the best violinist in the world and saying, and the conductor going, yeah, fine. You can be a part of this now. You're with him. He's the one that covers us. He's the one that allows us. He is the mercy seat. He allows us to be in the presence of the Lord. And when we see that, when we think about this, it's not just the beginning stages. You don't just come and say, I know I'm a bad person and Lord forgive me, and now I'll never think about that again. The more we ponder and the more we think, the more that we remember, our faith grows. Faith isn't a skill. It isn't a talent that some people have. It doesn't just pop on in hard times. You know, you don't set it and say, like a thermostat. You don't go into your house and say, all right, 70 degrees. And that's where I'll set it. And then if it climbs a little higher, you know, a couple degrees, and then, there we go, air conditioning. Or if it starts to dip, there goes the furnace. Now I'm warm. I don't have to think about it. Set it and forget it. Nowadays you got apps and things like that. Faith isn't like that. Faith isn't just like, I've set my faith for when things get this bad or this good or what it'll click on. That's not how faith works. It isn't like a thermostat that just clicks on when it gets cold. Faith is taking the truth of God, the facts about God, what's been said about you from the heart of God, and preaching that to yourself and remembering it. Jonah was remembering, I've done wrong. I'm a fool for what I've done, but I'm going to look to the place where you have established a way to forgive and to redeem and to cover and to help those who are as foolish as me. Faith is taking the truth and the facts of God and preaching those to yourself. You stop listening to yourself. I have to do this all the time. It's so easy for me to get beat down, frustrated. Somebody doesn't come. Somebody doesn't help. Something doesn't happen. Something goes wrong. A bill comes in, whatever. And immediately there's no issue with talking to yourself. And how are we going to pay this? And what are we going to do with this? And they don't even care. And you can just go to town. And you just start listening to your heart rather than preaching to your heart, saying, he has promised he will never leave me or forsake me. He has said that I can go to the ends of the earth and that he will be right there. He has said that I don't need to fear those who can kill the body, but only worry about the one that has power over your soul. He has said, look to the birds and look to the fields with the flowers. And he has told me if they have what they need, you'll have what you need. And even if you don't, even if you fell over dead right now, you have no clue of what's promised and what's coming and what there is on the other side of everything. Paul was shown it all and he said, I can't even tell you about it. All I can say is that the current situation you're in right now is not even worth comparing. It's not even worth talking about. Don't even bring it up. That's preaching to yourself, not listening to yourself. And faith is calling out to God and beginning to move from calling to seeing and to remembering and to thinking on. You stop listening to yourself when things get bad and you begin to preach yourself the truth. He says, I feel banished from your presence, and yet, we talked about this last week, and yet I will look to your temple. That's Jonah saying, look, gosh, if anybody had the right to look at their circumstances and their conditions and to get down, it was Jonah. He says, but I'm not going to look to those things. I'm going to look to the truth. I'm going to let my faith rise. I'm not going to listen to myself, but I'm going to preach to myself and remember and consider and ponder the truth. Jesus himself, years later, would come along and say, don't be anxious about your life. Don't worry about your life. I don't think we sometimes think about this. The Son of God, God incarnate, put on flesh to stand with us, and he told us, he's telling you, he says, don't worry about your life. Don't worry about what's going on in the world. Don't worry. Don't be anxious. Trust me. Believe in me. Relax. Rest. He says, consider. Think about the things I've told you, I've shown you, I've already done. When I point out things like birds and flowers to say, look, I take care of them, I'm going to take care of you. Faith is thinking. Faith is remembering. But what can you think about? What can you remember if you don't know the promise? I don't know what he said about that. I don't know what he told me. I don't know what he ever even said about anything because I've never studied and listened and learned. Because, see, that's the fuel in the tank. That's the gas. That's when you go, man, if he's for me, who can be against me? I've told people you could be the strongest, just nothing could shake you. Nothing. If you fully, really rested in, leaned back and relied on everything that Christ has promised and told us. So Jonah yells, then he thinks, and then he remembers and ponders. But then lastly, verse 9, he says, I will sacrifice to you what I have vowed I will make good. He's gone from just calling to then thinking to lastly, he commits. You got to remember, he's not out of the fish. He doesn't say, I'll offer sacrifices and I will keep my vows and I will when he's on the beach. He's still in the fish. He's still in the deep. So how can he say he'll do all this? The point that he's making is, no matter what happens, Lord, I'm yours. Not much of an offering when I'm buried in the deepest parts of the world in a fish. I don't know what I can do, but I still, nonetheless, I'm putting it on the altar. It's all yours. All that I have, all that I am, it's yours. This is where I should have started. It's the only default answer, and yet I've tried to be foolish and run, but I'm yours. I mean, today you can sit here and find out you got to have a procedure done, and you can go and get online and research all the doctors and all the places and check with your insurance, and everybody says this one's good. He's one of the best, and you can call him and talk to him, and you can get input on what's going to happen. You can do all those things, but eventually you have to what? Commit and believe in and trust that doctor to start cutting. It's one thing to say he's the best. Right, when's your procedure? Oh, I'm not doing that. He's a board-certified, award-winning, he's the greatest. He knows everything about this. Right, and when is he going to help you with it? Oh, I'm not letting him cut me. There's a point where faith moves from just calling, and it's wonderful to know the truth and believe it and to think on it and to ponder it, but ultimately you've got to commit. You have to commit. And faith is preaching the truth to yourself. Calling out to the only one that we have, preaching the truth about him that we've been given, and then committing to that. And I know for a fact some of us are sitting here today and you feel like you're trapped. You feel like you're in the deep. You're in the whale. Call out. Let's start with step one. Yell. Only remember that it's not just into any general direction. It's to him. Call out to him. And begin to let the truth of his word and his promises flow over you. I mean, what a place it would be if every single one of us, again, like I said, we don't have to be some giant 50 million people. It just takes a few believers who really, really know what it is to not just wait for the thermostat to click on, because that will never happen. I'm just telling you, if you sit there in the troubles and you're just waiting for faith to just, and you're filled with faith, it takes you saying, I won't let this wash over me and destroy me. I am going to call out to him. When Peter began to sink, what did he say? Lord, save me. And Jesus does, and he says, you have little faith. Remember who I am, what I'm capable of doing. Don't turn away. Don't look anywhere else. Remember me. Call out to me. What a place we would be if just some of us really began to know what it is to let our faith rise, what it is to always preach the gospel to ourselves, always remembering what it is he's done for us. Never boasting in what we've done, because that's nothing. But always driven to live for him, to do more. Not to earn anything, but to just give thanks for what's already been done. Because it's all a gift from God. That's what we've spent last week. Jonah remembers the grace freely given. You get to Ephesians 5, Colossians 3, it tells us to sing songs of salvation to our own hearts and to one another. Are you singing to your heart today, or are you just listening? Sing to it. Say, be quiet. The heart is deceitfully wicked, is what the Bible says. Who can trust it? Who can know it? So don't listen to it. I can't stand when the world ever, just follow your heart. If only your heart was pure and holy and righteous and wanted to think of others more than itself and serve the Lord and then follow your heart. But our heart is literally sick. We started here. This whole issue with Jonah was about his heart. Sing to your heart. Sing to each other's hearts. Don't listen to the junk that tries to come out. We need to preach to ourselves the truth of the gospel. You might be at the very bottom. I mean, even in a room with just a few people like this, some of us could really be facing some big stuff. Call out. Think about his goodness. Think about it. I love that Jesus doesn't say, check your brain at the door. If you're going to be a Christian, you just got to be blind and just walk around by faith. No, he says, think about it. Think about what I've promised. Think about what I've told you. Consider it. And you tell me if it isn't right and it isn't true. Think about it. Call out to him. Consider what he's done. And then commit. Say, I'm yours. Even while you're still in the belly of the fish. Let your faith start to rise from that place. I'm going to pray real quick, but in a minute, Lauren and I are going to stand up here. We're going to play The Goodness of God. We've played that 1,000,000 times. Today, I want you to really think about the goodness of God. Where and how has he been good to you? And don't just think about well, he gave me a car, he gave me a job. Think about the fact that he died for you. Think about the fact that he cherishes you and loves you and has done everything he could to have eternity with you. Think about the goodness of God as we sing. You don't have to stand. If you feel led to, by all means. If you want to sing, never in 1,000,000 years would I tell you not to. But let's do what Jonah did. Let's call out to him today. If you're in you might not even be in the deepest places, but the fact is, even if you're in the shallows, God is ready. One of the ways we get down into the deep is that when we're in the shallow places, we go, well, he doesn't want to be bothered with this. He cares about you. He loves you. And even the smallest things he wants to know about. Call out to him. Father, we come before you this morning thankful for the truth of your word that has revealed to us how important it is for us, Lord, to realize that faith is not some talent that just some of us have. Faith is us knowing where to look and calling out to you and remembering what you've done for us. Jonah didn't even have the full picture. And yet he called you. He remembered what you are willing to do for us. Father, I pray in this moment as we sing, as we think about your goodness, that you would move in our heart. Compel us, Lord, to stop playing around, to stop running and getting on ships to Tarshish and heading the other way and getting as far as we can, but surrendering to you today and saying, Lord, I will, with thanksgiving, offer sacrifice and humble myself to you, Lord. Let us do that today. Lord, just meet with us here in this time. We pray in Jesus' name.